The plane hummed at cruising altitude. It was a late afternoon flight. People reclined, read, slept. In row 12 a woman sat by the window holding a small boy. He was too restless, rubbing an ear and whimpering. Her bag was simple. Her hair was tied back. She moved with the economy of someone used to doing everything herself. Across the aisle a man in a tailored suit scowled. He held a flute of champagne like a scepter and watched with thinly veiled irritation. When the child's cries grew, so did his annoyance. Could they not keep the kid quiet? He muttered loud enough for those near him to hear. A few heads shifted. The woman kept soothing the child, rocking, murmuring words only a mother could know. "Maybe you should move to the back," he said, voice sharp with entitlement. "This is first class." The cabin tightened. "Excuse me," the woman said, steady but exhausted. "He's sick." "I'm trying." Flight attendants appeared quickly, politely. "Is there anything we can do?" one asked. The man rolled his eyes. "I paid for peace, not for a circus." Before it could escalate, the child's crying changed into a hollow sound. He slumped in his mother's arms. His face went pale. A passenger shouted. The attendants and a nurse who happened to be on board rushed over. Oxygen, a medical kit, practiced hands. For a few minutes everything moved with the efficiency of people trained to respond to emergencies. "He's breathing," the nurse said after checking. "We need to monitor him." The mother, worn but composed, answered questions about allergies and recent symptoms. "He had an earache," she said. "He vomited a little. He hasn't had a fever." They kept him upright, gave sips of water, and within the span of tense minutes his color returned. Passengers exhaled, some with relief, some with tears held back. The captain's voice came over the intercom. "We had a medical event on board. Thanks to those who assisted. The child is stable, but we alerted medical control on the ground." Then he added, "Mrs. Carter in row 12, could you come to the cockpit for a moment? This is regarding your son." A hush fell. The woman blinked. "Carter." She rose, carrying her child who now clung to her shoulder, and moved forward. The suited man watched with something like curiosity. His expression suggested he expected chaos and spectacle. Inside the cockpit, the captain closed the door and offered her a seat on a small jump seat. He was official and kind. "Can you tell me more about his symptoms?" She repeated what she'd already said. Her name was Maya Carter, she told him. She had tried to be ordinary, to shield her son from the attention that came with a name tied to a foundation and public giving. She flew without the fanfare, with the quiet satisfaction of someone whose resources existed for causes, not headlines. The captain studied her profile and then the documents the airline keeps for emergencies. Medical contacts, emergency power of attorney notes, a card listing critical contacts for passengers who are public figures, included so crews could coordinate discreetly when needed. "We wanted to know if there's someone we should call on arrival, or specific medical consent protocols," he said. When he realized who she was, his tone didn't sharpen with awe, it softened. "We'll coordinate with ground medical and make sure there's someone ready when we land," he said. "Your son's well-being is the priority." Maya felt a flush of embarrassment. She had never wanted special treatment. She had built channels to help children quietly through schools and clinics, but she had also learned, painfully, that sometimes you could not stay small. "I just wanted him to have a normal trip," she said. "I didn't want attention." "You got something more useful. People who acted because they cared," the captain replied. "Not because of your name." When Maya returned to her seat, the cabin atmosphere had shifted. Those who had rushed to help were thanked. Passengers clapped quietly, not for a celebrity, but for the quick response that had steadied a small life. The suited man sat rigid, his superiority chipped. He caught Maya's eye. For a moment there was an apology in his face. He opened his mouth and then closed it. Later, as the flight continued, the suited man reached for his glass and with a small, awkward motion said, "I'm sorry. I was rude." It was not a theatrical remorse. It was real in its smallness. Maya accepted it not because she craved contrition, but because the work of the day required more than holding grudges. "Thank you," she said. "We all get it wrong sometimes." The rest of the trip passed in a gentler rhythm. The crew checked in on them often. People who had been strangers earlier now exchanged soft smiles. The nurse who had assisted left Maya a note with her contact information in case anything worsened. A young mother who had been a witness offered a spare blanket. A teenage boy handed the child a small sticker and received a grateful grin. On the descent into Los Angeles, the captain made a final announcement. "We appreciate everyone's calm and assistance. thanks to the medical volunteers and the passenger in row 12 for her composure. He didn't mention a foundation or a name, only gratitude. When the plane touched down and passengers began to rise, the suited man stood, hesitated, and walked to Maya. He reached into his pocket and offered a card. Simple, his name and company. "If there's anything you need," he said. "If I can help." Maya took it, folding it between her fingers. She glanced at the name. It meant less than the gesture. "Thank you," she said. They stepped off together into the bright terminal, a motley group carrying strollers and suitcases, a nurse brushing a crumb of coffee from her sleeve, a young teacher balancing a stack of papers. Cameras at the gate, a few reporters who'd been covering an unrelated arrival, snapped pictures. But the moment that lingered was smaller and truer. A captain who made an emergency call and coordinated care, strangers who acted without waiting for notice, and a woman who, despite being wealthy in a way she used to help others, had boarded seeking ordinary anonymity and instead found a kind of public humanity. As the crowd dispersed into the river of arrivals, some passengers lingered in small clusters, trading the currency of human connection. Phone numbers, quiet reassurances, offers to be a contact in case anything changed. The nurse who had stayed with them until the gate kissed the pavement hugged Maya briefly, her voice low. "You did the right thing coming forward," she said. "You were calm and quick. That matters." Maya answered with a small smile that didn't hide the exhaustion. She told the nurse, honestly, that she had spent years avoiding headlines. The foundation she led had built clinics in neighborhoods many governments ignored. It had funded training programs for public school nurses and provided grants so teachers could buy textbooks. But she had also learned that notoriety could complicate a child's life in ways money could not fix. She preferred to move quietly, to be the hand that guided from behind. "People don't always show generosity for the right reasons," she told the nurse. "Sometimes they give when cameras are rolling." "I wanted him to be a child first." The nurse nodded. "And he is. You gave him that." Meanwhile, the suited man stood with his company card folded in his hand like a small confession. He had been raised to equate value with visibility. Logos, titles, windows on top floors. Today those things felt flimsy. He watched Maya wheel the stroller away and saw how she didn't look around for praise. Her anonymity had been a choice as much as a shield. The realization opened a narrow door inside him, one he wasn't sure how to walk through. On impulse, he found the airline manager near the gate. "What can I do to help?" he asked. The manager blinked. "Sir, we've got ground medical waiting, and the family will be met by paramedics if needed. Are you offering to help the mother in some way?" "Yes," he said, clarity arriving like a late train. "If the mother needs anything, get in touch. And perhaps alert the airline to train staff in better sensitivity training. People were cruel, that shouldn't happen." He meant it. Not because it would make his name larger, but because the day had shown him a gap between how he expected the world to behave and how it could behave if people chose compassion. The captain, meanwhile, had returned to his console and watched the cabin clear with a satisfaction that had nothing to do with landing a plane smoothly. When he'd called for medical volunteers, it wasn't because he wanted to see a name announced. He wanted the flight to be safe. When he mentioned Mrs. Carter, he had done so not to elevate her but to ensure the airline coordinated with the right people on the ground without violating privacy. The crew had handled it, efficiently and humanely. As passengers flowed into the terminal, a young teacher who had given Maya a spare charger approached the suited man. "It's not every day you see people step up," she said. "But when they do, it changes the whole flight." He thought about that and then about the clumsy apology he'd offered earlier, and this time he added detail. "I don't have children," he confessed. "I hadn't thought about what it's like to watch someone you love be sick. Today I saw that my assumptions do more harm than good. I'm going to try to be better." The teacher smiled, and it wasn't condescending. It was the kind of smile that recognizes a beginning. "We all need reminders." Maya's son slept through the shuffle of the terminal, exhausted by emotion and air pressure. Maya carried him into a small car waiting curbside, a driver waiting with a child seat and a neutral smile. The foundation had arranged discreet transportation, a choice she made not for pomp but for ease. When she strapped him in, she felt the weight of the day's small miracles. Strangers who acted instead of looking away, a nurse who knelt without regard for status, a captain who balanced procedure with compassion.